Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Vivimos juntos.
We live united.
We live united.
I live united.
Live united.
Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Live United, a show that explores how, when community partnerships are formed and when people work together, lives are enriched and changed for the better. I'm Milton Little, host of Live United. We're here today at the Georgia Tech Hotel and Conference Center for the Coffee and Communities Issues Breakfast. This event is organized by United Way's Women's Leadership Council, and it brings together hundreds of education thought leaders from all across Greater Atlanta and the nation to discuss one of the most important issues we have, and that's early childhood learning and support. Early education is an important topic because, according to Georgia's Voices for Children, 43% of young children are exposed to risk factors that lead to unhealthy child development. These include poverty, parents with less than a high school education, single-parent homes, and many more. In these situations, children are at risk of falling behind in school or dropping out or showing higher incidences of risky behaviors. So take a look at this special episode titled, Early Learning Impacts Us All, Georgia's Children Need You, as we discuss the issues and ways as a community we can help our children and families succeed.
Change. It begins with a simple act. An outstretched hand, an open door, a second chance. Together, the momentum of our actions is a force unlike any other, clearing the way to new beginnings, higher hopes, bigger dreams. A gift to United Way means a child has a chance to learn. A mother has a healthy newborn. A young man earns a stable living. A family has a place they're proud to call home. Giving to United Way, a simple act, changes the course of a life, the position of the family, and shapes the future of your community. Giving to United Way simply changes you. Be the change you want to see. Be Greater Atlanta.
It is now my pleasure to welcome a guy I had the pleasure of walking the streets of Boston with before I came down to Atlanta to run this United Way, and that's Earl Martin Phailin, who is today's keynote speaker. Earl's national Reach Out and Read program has made significant progress here in Georgia, and we are excited that he's been able to come back and join us today. He's been a partner through the Georgia School Readiness Initiative. And now, with the support of United Way and our partners, Reach Out and Read is growing its network of hospitals and healthcare systems where pediatricians are trained in its three-part literacy model. We're pleased to have Earl return to share his unique perspective on how important reading is to young minds. Earl's a graduate of Yale University and the Harvard Law School and went on to a career of success and achievement, but he's dedicated his last 20 years to expanding life opportunities for children through learning and academic engagement. And he's been recognized nationally for the tremendous work and partnership that he's done. Worked with BET Spirit of Service Award, and he's been recognized by 2 U.S. presidents. I am proud to bring to the stage the CEO of Reach Out and Read and the founder of Summer Advantage USA, Mr. Earl Phailin.
Good morning. Yeah, I'm from that black church tradition of call and response, so I really need some love back from you this morning. So let's try that again. Good morning. Okay, that's much better. It's much better. Nice to be here. My PowerPoint's going to come up in a second, but I first want to thank Milton and Dr. Walker for inviting me to be here with you today, and to thank each and every one of you for making the time to figure out how are we really going to help all of our children fulfill their tremendous innate potential. You'll see some of the statistics, you'll see some of the data, but I don't want to get too locked up in that, but I do want to look at what that data says to us on the next slide. So the data tells a story, and again, don't worry too much about the data points, you can collect that later, but I want to look at the story that the data tells us. It tells us that very, very early on, a pathway is set for our children, whether they're headed to a pathway of success or a pathway of failure or tremendous life challenges. And when you kind of look at the messages, you see 35%, 1 in 3 of our young people are showing up their first day of school significantly below grade level. And when you think about the skills, that means they don't know very many letters of the alphabet. They don't know that you hold a book with a spine down the left. They don't know that you read from left to right. And 1 in 6 of those young people, if they haven't caught up on their reading proficiency in 3rd grade, they'll end up dropping out of school. In Massachusetts, where I'm from, a recent report was released that said 68% of the new jobs, the jobs that allow you to sustain yourself, take care of your family and your loved ones, 68% of those jobs are going to require a Bachelor of Arts degree. And when you look at the data, though, it's saying something very different. It's saying that, in fact, 25% of our children aren't even finishing high school. And then only 26% of children of all income levels are actually getting that Bachelor of Arts in 4 years. That creates 2 challenges for us as a country and 2 challenges for us as a state. On the one side, that 25% that are dropping out, you see incarceration rates. If you look at that last bullet point, you see incarceration rates that would make you shake if you looked at them and really thought about them. That's costing us $68 billion every year because we're failing to educate our children and set them up for high success. And on the other side of the equation, we're having an ever-shrinking pool of talent that can help this country be the great nation that it is. We don't believe in any panacea or one thing will fix everything. It's just like raising a child in many respects. It's not one experience, it's not one moment, it's not one exposure. It's the whole long commitment that really helps children succeed. I'd love to do a quick quiz, just by show of hands. How many people when they were in school would have said, I'm not very good at math, I'm not very good at math? Raise your hands. And keep your hand up for a second. Of those, how many pursued a career where math is the primary skill that you need to use? Right, okay. So you'll see on the next slide, there's a behavioral piece behind that, right? It's called, it's very simple. It's potential beliefs, actions, results. You have unlimited potential. You all could have been great in math, and I'm not going to open up a Khan Academy here for us to go through, but you could have been great at math, right? But somewhere something happened where you believed that you weren't good at math, and it could have been a slight comment where you're doing your homework and a parent said, I was never good at math either, right? Something like that. It could have been something that was feedback on a test. And so that belief then leads into lack of willingness to put in the action. That lack of action puts in poor results, and then all of a sudden you've created this cycle. And that cycle can go both ways. If you're told you're great at something, you believe that you're good at it, you're going to put in more action, you're going to find ways to get good. If the test doesn't turn out the way you said, it's because that teacher didn't teach you in the right way, right? It's not your fault, it's their fault, right? So that's kind of how that success cycle works. And that's what's happening for our children. They're being set up for failure, on the next slide, they're being set up for failure before they ever even hit the schoolhouse door, both on the neuroscience and on the behavioral science. In an engaged family where parents are really talking to their children, singing with their child, reading to their child, you'll see that they'll be exposed to about 2,100 words, about 3 times as many words as in a home of a less engaged child. By age 3, that's turned into knowing 1,100 words versus knowing 500 words. So you have double the word knowledge. By age 4, the Hart-Risley study comes out, the famous Hart-Risley study that says 4-year-olds in more engaged households know 30 or have heard 30 million more words by age 4. than a child in a less engaged house. And quite frankly, the quality of those words are better as well, which is, what color is that? What are you thinking about? What do you think is going to happen in the story? Versus the negative, go to bed, brush your teeth, get off your brother, which unfortunately in my house happened a lot, and I was on the bottom of that equation, which was even worse. And so you can imagine when the child shows up the first day of school and they're so excited, they're meeting new friends and they're going to have this great new experience, and the teacher pulls them over for reading circle and opens up Goodnight Moon and says, or takes out Goodnight Moon and says, oh, how many of you have read this book before, right? And half the class's hands shoot up, but my hand didn't shoot up. Uh-oh. Will you tell me describe what's on this cover? And people are so eager, and the young children are so eager to share, and I'm a little bit slower to the trigger. And then I'm asked to predict, and I don't know what predict means. Predict what you think's gonna happen in this story. And pretty soon, I develop a belief about myself, right? And that's what's happening to our children. They believe, because of that early interaction, that wait a second, I'm not very smart, and school may not be for me. So what are some of the solutions? I think that there are two things that I want to look at, and you can tear this apart, but two things I think it's so critical for us to do as policymakers, as practitioners, as donors, as volunteers. One is to have a framework, and then the second is to focus on funding. So let's just talk a little bit about the framework. Again, you could dissect this framework as much as you want, but I've found that there are two major levers. So if you're thinking about what you want to do with your time, or how you want to invest your money, or what policies should be changed, there are two levels, and those levels are simply people and time. We need engaged parents, we need great teachers in child care centers and in schools, we need incredible principals leading our teachers, we need great superintendents of schools. I just added that. That wasn't in my previous presentation, but I see you right down there, so I'll add that in there, all right? And we need the ability to get good teachers in, and we need the ability and to pay them what they deserve for such a hard job, and we also need the ability and flexibility to remove those who aren't effective. And on the time side, it's very simple. Get parents engaged right from birth, as Milton described, Reach Out and Read is trying to do. Ensure there are high-quality programs for 3- and 4-year-olds like the Atlanta Speech School and Primrose and many other great programs that I don't know just because I'm not from here. And then we need to start to change to move away from the agrarian calendar. And I thought I heard, and I could be wrong, did you guys go in the actual opposite direction from 180 days down, or did that ever pass? That didn't pass? We're still 180 days here? Okay, all right. Because that, when I say framework, when you're looking at things and you're hearing, hey, listen, we may go to 160 days because it's going to save us a little on busing and air condition, you should be screaming from the top of the mountains, right? So that's the framework that we should have as you're looking at your investments. On the other side, what I want to talk about is funding. Because what you always hear these days now, ever since the recession, we don't have the money. I kind of have two thoughts about both those who invest in great programs and those who kind of say we don't have the resources, right? On the first point, to the resources, we just spent what on this last election? We spent $6 billion on the presidential election alone, but we don't have the money, right? My work is also just in terms of those who are investing in programs and are sometimes saying, gosh, your program's not scalable and it's a little bit too expensive, but it gets these great results. Yeah, but you got to get it down if you want to grow it. And I've been involved in a lot of court systems just because of the nature of my work with middle school and high school students. And never once have I seen a judge say, Raheem, you're in here for the second time. I told you what was going to happen. I told you were going to get 10 years. 10 years times $35,000 a year, no definable outcomes. It's not scalable, so I'm not going to send you away, right? We have the money for the things that we care about. And it's $68 billion to send Raheem away, right? $35,000 a year. So I ask you to think, as you're thinking about investments, if a program's really working and it needs the resources, to put those resources into it and not ask it to scale back so that it can become scalable. The final thing I'd share is just a story, and it's a story about a teenager, a teenage mom who caught herself in or a teenager who caught herself in a tough situation. She was pregnant, and she was being raised by her aunt, as many of our children are being raised by their grandparents or extended relatives. And they made a decision that she would go away and have her child in privacy, go away from any shame. And she also made a decision that she wasn't going to be able to take care of her child, so she'd place her child up for adoption. And to cut to the end of the story, that baby was me. And in 1967, I went into my first foster home. And in 1968, I went into my second foster home. And the statistics said that 70% of black boys who were in the Massachusetts foster care system would end up where? Prison, by the time that they were 21. And as Milton shared, I'm blessed to be the youngest of 8. I have 35 beautiful nephews and nieces. I'm a graduate of Yale University and Harvard Law School, and I've been able to devote the last 20 years of my life to raising other people's children, supporting other people's children, and being the best they can. I don't stand here but for the grace of God. I don't stand here but for my parents, who after having 7 children naturally born decided that they could reach a little further and make a difference. And I don't stand here but for donors and agencies like the United Way, who made sure that when I was in my first 2 years, I was protected, cared for, and placed in the exactly perfect family that would allow me to thrive. So I thank you so much for your work. I thank you so much for your commitment to other people's children, and I look forward to speaking with you later. Thank you.
There are 3 issues that have been identified that must be addressed. Are you ready? There will be a quiz at the end of the program. School readiness, chronic absenteeism, and summer learning loss. So with that said, I can think of no better way to begin our conversation with our panelists by starting with this question. Here we go, panelists. And by the way, you have my permission to display the passion that you have for this topic. I know as you look out, I've talked to these folks individually, so I know that they've got a lot of passion and energy and purpose. This is their life's work, understand? So you have permission to speak your mind and your heart. Bring it to the conversation. And now I'm thinking, oh, what have I done? Too late. So panelists, please share with our guest, from your perspective, why these issues of summer learning loss, school readiness, and chronic absenteeism are so important, what role your organization plays in addressing them. And then as you talk about these issues, please share why you believe that ages from birth to 8 years old or 3rd grade are so crucial for our children, our community, and our economy. Earl, we'll start with you and just go right down the row.
Sure. I've shared kind of why I think it's important. And our focus is really saying if 0 to 3 are such critical years for brain development, who are the only people who touch our children consistently at that age, and it's parents. So my organization, Reach Out and Read, works through pediatricians to really change parental behavior. So at every well child visit, our pediatricians deliver a brand new age-appropriate book. They deliver the message, reading to your child is one of the most important things you can do for their long-term health. And they model didactic reading, that serve and return, where you're asking questions, not just rushing through, but asking questions. We work with 12,000 pediatricians in all 50 states, and we're at 5,000 clinics, and we touch about 4 million children. And I'm so pleased that our recent longitudinal study showed that families with a whole series of risk factors, English was a second language, single mom, poverty, blah, 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 with a whole bunch of risk factors, we followed them from 6 months through the end of kindergarten. 77% of our children were reading at or above proficiency because we helped get parents to step into their role as their child's first and most important teacher.
Thank you. Gail.
Right. So Jean, thank you for the opportunity to be part of the panel, because this is exactly the audience that the Annie E. Casey Foundation wants to reach with our grade level reading campaign. The Annie E. Casey Foundation is a national foundation whose mission is to improve the lives of the nation's most vulnerable kids. So once we discovered and realized that being a successful reader by 3rd grade was the best predictor of high school graduation, and the second point's really important, 80% of low-income kids were not successful readers, that compelled us to take action. First of all, we did our first ever special kids count report called Early Warning, Why Third Grade Reading Matters. And I want you to know that you just can Google grade level reading, it's the first thing that'll pop up. And it actually has been the most popular publication that we've ever published. The second thing we did was, given the urgency of this issue, we organized our first ever national campaign. And we actually committed to 10 years and $50 million to address this issue. And the third, which I think is really the most important, is that we reached out and signed up partners all across the country. We have 1,600 community organizations working in 124 cities. We have 350 school districts that are reaching 8 million kids, and we have 167 funders. Now, everybody sitting on the stage today is one of those partners in Georgia. So I want you to know, while this is probably the most ambitious goal we've ever set as a foundation, because we want to double the number of kids by 2020 that are proficient readers by third grade, this is actually mission possible. It's actually the things we're going to be talking about this morning. This is, you can leave this morning and say, oh, actually, this is a serious and crucial issue, but we actually can do something about it.
Thank you, Gail. Earl.
Yeah, well, let me say first, I'm having a little cognitive dissonance here. I mean, you're asking engineers to be passionate, and that's been bred out of our genes. And also, when you put an Earl and an Earl on the same stage, I keep wanting, it gets to be a challenge. I'm not going to talk a lot right now about readiness, because I think we've seen the research, and we're going to talk more about programs, and there are people who are much more expert than I. But on the other two issues you mentioned, the summer learning loss, that is a real phenomena. It's an interesting phenomena. We've tried some different things within our system. We're actually a system that has different calendars. We have a couple, 3 year-round schools, and we've found interesting things about summer learning loss. Of course, it does exist, but interestingly, summer learning loss in mathematics is not as income dependent as summer loss in literacy. And what we find in literacy for lower income groups, there's massive summer reading skill loss, and we often see gains in upper middle class groups because of enrichment experiences and reading. Absenteeism, the third one you mentioned, is something that we're taking a really hard look at, because we know that if we look at the 8th grade, for example, and look at what is the probability of graduating from high school if you've had 5 days of absence in the 8th grade, and it's reasonably high, in the 70% or so, and you keep adding the days. But if it gets greater than 15 days in 8th grade, we're talking about in the 20% probability of graduating. And so you take that statistic and then you ask yourself, what has been our first impulse to deal with unruly, particularly young males, and that is to expel them, give them some sort of detention, send them home for a few days. And so we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And so we're really looking very hard at our disciplinary policies to make sure that they're consistent. There will be disruptive behaviors that we have to deal with, but we have to train all of our staff to deal with them appropriately, and we have to make sure that students are in school longer periods of time, not shorter periods of time.
Thank you. Comer.
Great. I think maybe passion might involve standing up, if that's okay. Let's try to drive home the point of school readiness real quickly with this audience, if I could. So can these two rows hold up your hands real quickly? These two rows of tables over here in this corner. Nope, not those two. Those two over there. Okay, hold up your hands really high. Okay, let's talk about school readiness and maybe what the outcomes are. 1/6 of our, okay, you can quit showing off. 1/6 of our children are going to read on grade level by 3rd grade. So let's talk about what happens to people in this room. This group of children who are going to have engaged parents, and we have inflicted on parents the lack of ability to be engaged with their children. At the speech school, we've spent 75 years with children in literacy crisis, many of whom have been from families where parents are working 2 jobs because they were denied the educational opportunity to do anything but work 2 jobs to be able to provide for their children. So anyway, let's talk real quickly. This group of children, when they show up for kindergarten, they know 3 times as many words as the rest of us do. I'll put us over here. They know 3 times as many words when they get to kindergarten. When they get to kindergarten, we are met by teachers traditionally across this country who now spend the next 3 years teaching us to do what? How to do what? To read. They teach us how to read. What they're going to do when they have us learn how to read, they're going to show to us complex books. Are they going to hand us Harry Potter to read? No, they're going to hand us very simple text, very simple print. Reading is extracting meaning from print. There is not any meaning in these books. We are all learning the mechanics of reading. It's like a 15-year-old driving around in a parking lot in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. You're learning the mechanics. In 3rd grade, what's supposed to have happened? Have you mastered the mechanics of driving around the parking lot and reading with this basic text? You show up for 3rd grade, and what does the text look like in the books that are put in front of you in 3rd grade? All of a sudden, exponentially, the vocabulary has gotten much, much greater because now what's your charge? Are you learning to read anymore? No, you're reading to learn, and you're going to have to learn 4,000 new vocabulary words in your 3rd grade year. How are you going to learn those 4,000 new vocabulary words? You're going to open these books rich with print, and this group over here is going to know 9 of the 10 words that are put before them. How are you guys going to learn the 10th word? How are you going to learn the 10th word? Guys? They're going to learn the 10th word in context of the other 9, right? And they're going to add 4,000 new vocabulary words that year and every other year. Now, the rest of you, how many words do you know out of those 10? 3. What is your chance to learn that 10th word? None. That's why the superintendent of schools in Mississippi said that in Mississippi, the average adult of poverty has the same vocabulary as a child of what age of affluence? 5. So when you turn old, you will have the same vocabulary they did when they were 5. And who's got a chance in this room?
Thank you, Comer.
You've been watching Part 1 of United Way's Coffee and Community discussion on early childhood education. Stay tuned next week, same time, as we continue to talk about helping our children and families create a path to success.